This is Jonathan Ayala, your most faithful caller in the history of everything. Good.
We're gonna be busy tonight, so I don't know if I can get you on or not.
Alright.
Try, okay?
Alright. You'll try. Alright.
Alright, thanks, man.
Alright. My.
6 minutes until showtime.
6 minutes. Yeah. And me.
Five minutes until showtime. Minutes until showtime.
Hey, Rick.
This is Sharif.
Hey, Sharif. It's Julio. Hi. Just give me a couple minutes. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Glad to be back on.
So most of it's going to be the guests talking. They're going to be. So let me get Rick on. I'm going to put you on mute. I just want to make sure you're on.
Cool.
Hey, Rick.
3 minutes until showtime.
Yeah. How are you? Good, man. Appreciate you doing this. Absolutely. So we're going to put you on mute, and I'll bring in probably like 40 seconds in, maybe a minute in after Sharif and I banter a little bit, and then we're expecting couple of calls coming in, correct?
Yeah, at 7:20, Eddie De La Cruz is going to call in, and so is Felix. And I sent you the email saying that Felix, And then,
we won't make any. With no one. Of course. All right, so Eddie and Felix are going to come in around 7:20, and then the woman's name again. I'm sorry.
Victoria Chona, I told her that Eddie and Felix were going to be out there, but that Phoenix was dealing with issues relative to this event. And so she said, you know what, Rick, I just may give you 2 minutes until showtime. She said, and I'll decide whether or not I'm going to call in. She said, but,
okay. I think we're good now. I mean,
we got Eddie and then we got a variety of people after them.
Okay, well, I'm just going to man the dashboard. I might mute myself with people coming in. I don't have Christian as a producer, so I have to do a couple of things. And then Sharice is on as well. So, if she asks questions, it's probably because I'm getting calls coming in and all that. So, we'll make it happen. And no rush. So, we're probably like a minute and a half away. I'm going to get all prepped. But, thanks for doing this, man. I appreciate it. So, okay, I'm going to put you on mute until we bring you in. Think of it, okay.
Hey, Julio.
So we're going to get a lot of people from Pasco supposedly calling in. So, 1 minute is until showtime. I have to kind of be Christian as well, depending on how many people call in. So you might get a cue from me on the radio saying, oh, we can get some other calls coming in. And that should be your cue to be like, if there's follow-up with Rick, like you could just go ahead and follow up while I see who else calls in.
Sounds good. FYI, I don't have my earpiece with me on, so I usually just kind of mute out the background. I'm in my room. It's
sounds fun.
Okay.
You sound fun. I mean, I'm on a landline as well. I mean, I just hope my battery doesn't last. If for any reason I pop out, just stick with it, all right? Don't freak out. If I pop out, it's all you.
Playing the Seahawks.
I'm going to put you on mute until music comes. Okay?
Yay!
Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Rebels Radio, just cut right out of that. Julio Ricardo Varela, Julito 77. It is Sunday, February 15, 2015, and we're going to jump right into it. So I'm not even going to banter here. I'm just going to say that was La Plebe, that was Velas Abiertas. I have Sharice Delgadillo from the Coast. How are you, Sharice?
It's feedback.
What's that? It is your feedback. I'm happy you're back. I'm happy about it. It is negative. It's ridiculous here in Boston. I'm in the studio in my home office, and I can't even see out the window because there's so much snow. But we're good. We got internet, we got electricity, and it's going to be a pretty powerful, emotional show tonight because we're going to talk a lot about the shooting death of Antonio Zambrano Montes in Pasco, Washington. Sure, you've been following this case at all?
I've been reading up on it, and first of all, I didn't even know that the community existed out there in Washington. So first of all, that's an eye opener for me about where these agricultural communities are existing across the United States. And it's just, again, and every single time I turn on the TV, there's just so many videos of police killings. It's making me wonder: is it just that the media is paying more attention to it, or are the police actually thinking that they can keep acting with impunity and their violence is increasing? So, it's just
we're gonna dive into this. We have several people from Pasco who will be joining us, and the first person that I want to bring on is actually a family friend, a Latino Rebels contributor. He's known my dad for years, and he actually lives out in Pasco. And it's Rick Rios. Rick, we're very happy to have you here tonight with Chevy and myself. How are you?
Good, guys. How are you guys doing?
Great, good. So Rick, before we get into this, we've been talking a little bit. You're actually out there. You're part of Consejo Latino, which I believe is one of the groups working with the Zambrano Montes family. It's gotten global and international attention, but before we get into sort of the latest things that have happened, can you just explain, for the maybe 3 people out there that don't know what's going on, what actually happened earlier this week?
Well, it should be easy to summarize for you. On the 10th of this month, just last week, Tuesday, there was an altercation between an individual and 3 policemen. The policemen were sent to one of the busiest intersections in the Tri-Cities because of reports of a man throwing rocks at vehicles, and there's a ton of vehicles on that street. They show up, man confronts the police, he throws rocks at the police, they try to tase him, he runs away, they start shooting at him as he's running away. When he gets to the other side of the street, on the sidewalk, he turns, puts his hands up in the air, makes a movement, and all 3 policemen shoot him. And so they shoot him dead, he falls on the street, and they handcuff him, he lays on the street. Eventually, all the other support vehicles get there, and the crowd starts to form.
Right, and what happened right. So before we get into what happened then is that some of this was captured on video, and there's a couple of videos, not just one. One went very viral of it was in a car, and it was actually, you can see Antonio Zambrano Montes going around, and then you can see the policeman shooting him from the back. But there's another one that I believe local media in the Tri-Cities has started to analyze, and it actually shows what happened, that when he was shot, he was cuffed, and there was a lot of people speaking Spanish at the time, and someone actually translated it, saying, what's going on? He only threw a rock. It was actually near where, that people were in shock, right? I mean, there's another video. Is that feeling of shock sort of the general feeling going on in Pasco right now? I mean, what is the mood right now? What's going on?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's shock that this could happen in the middle of the day. Well, at the end of the day, still bright and sunshine, though, but on Century Street, where the police felt so threatened by this man that they had to shoot him in the street with people around, vehicles around, businesses around. Not all the bullets hit the man. So this was an eye-opener. What happened? What transpired? What would cause the police to take such action in this given scenario in front of all these people and say, this man with a rock in his hand is such a threat to the public that we have to kill him? That is what people immediately said. Why? Why would you shoot this man with a rock in his hand? There's 3 of you. He doesn't have a weapon. He has a rock in his hand. And then from there, as the chief of police said, you have to trust that the system will get the facts and the truth will come out, and we'll see if these 3 officers were justified in shooting this man in a busy street. That's what people want to make sure.
So that happened on Tuesday, right? That happened on Tuesday, February 10th. And your group, Consejo Latino, from what I understand, is involved in assisting the family. Sharice has some questions about the protest. We're going to talk about the protest that happened yesterday, the rally and the march. But what happened then from Tuesday to Friday? I mean, walk us through that, Rick.
From the point that this happened, people started gathering, people started asking, why? Why did this happen? Where's the justification of this? the fact that there was so much video of this, that there were so many witnesses, and that so many witnesses had a great view, is going to take a lot of the ambiguity when the police say, well, we felt threatened, we feared for our lives, we feared for the public safety, we had to shoot this man. From that point on, people started to organize. People that said, no, this is not going to happen in our town. This has to stop. This is the fourth killing by police in Pasco in the last 6 months. People are asking, why are so many people being shot in this town?
Right, and Pasco, the population of Pasco is what, 68,000?
Yeah, approximately that. And it's divided between West Pasco and East Pasco. And downtown Pasco is in the east side of the community. And Pasco is about 50% Hispanic. As we get into the spring and summer months and the agricultural season kicks up, then there's maybe another 8 to 10% influx of Hispanics into this area.
Right. So we're talking with Rick Rios, who lives in Pasco, part of Consejo Latino, talking about the reaction, the local reaction, and not necessarily the media national reaction that has happened to the shooting death of Antonio Zambrano Montes. And we're going to talk a little bit more about Antonio and what happened. But Sharice, I know you have a couple of questions. Why don't you answer it?
Sure. Hi, Rick. How are you?
Hi, Sharice.
Hi. So, first of all, I want to say that, coming from the California, you don't hear about these agricultural pockets that exist, scattered throughout the United States, like there's this small town in Washington. So there was a protest on Saturday, a demonstration. How was it? How many people turned out? Who was there? Do people really feel like they have a voice? Are they organized?
Well, yeah, we are getting organized. And there's more and more groups, more and more leaders, business leaders, people tied to local government that are making efforts to say, we do have a voice because there's so many of us, and we contribute to this community in a tremendous manner, not just from the labor side, but from the cultural side. Because the population, the entire population in the Tri-Cities is not going to get smaller. It's only going to continue to get larger because this is a phenomenal agricultural area. Maybe only second to California. We're the second largest wine producing state in the union. And there's 800,000. They are a huge part. The vast majority of the living in Eastern Washington, from Spokane all the way to Yakima, that's approximately 220 miles section. This is where the agricultural center of the Pacific Northwest exists. I grew up there, went all the way back to the 60s, but it wasn't this agricultural center. The growth of the agricultural industry in this area brought the Hispanic population here because they are indispensable. Industry, not just in Washington, but throughout the United States, specifically in California.
So, and how was the demonstration on Saturday? How many people were there? Who came out to support?
The police was on it. There was about 700 people that showed up. The news, media was saying there was as many as 1,000 people. One of the most interesting things was something that city manager Dave Dangle said at the end of the rally in the park where you had roughly 700,000 people gathered. When we left the park, he said, this is the most amazing event I have ever seen. And he said this to a news reporter. He said, I have to cancel the meeting crew because there is not a piece of paper left on this lawn. And that is an indication that this is the theme through the entire program event Saturday, the rally, the march, the vigil, was this is our community. We must have a voice in how our community is run.
I just want to follow up about the victim, Antonio. There was reports that he was actually a homeless man. Is that true?
Yes, well, he admitted he had actually been in jail. He he has a record. He had about a year ago. He actually was charged with assaulting an officer, and he had to be tasered, and that led to some problems that nobody knows about, nobody speaks about. But for the last year, he's had issues mentally, and he had been released from jail. He had been living at the shelter in Pasco. People knew who he was because he lived there for 10 years. He works in the orchard. But yeah, he was homeless. He was homeless.
Right, and from what I understand, the second video, which we just put up on LatinoRebels.com tonight, when people saw him getting shot in the back, right, and he was running, and from what I can gather, 3 police officers shot him in the back. He fell. They tried to, they went through the acts of cuffing him. But what I heard, at least, and I know local media has reported this, and I don't know if the national media has yet, but what I heard on that video was a couple of people who said, I know him. Yeah, I know who that person is.
He's lived here for 10 years.
Right, so it speaks sort of small, when people hear Pasco, Rick, you live there, you're involved, how tight-knit is it? It seems like, do people know each other out there?
Well, absolutely. The Hispanic community is very, very tight-knit. The Hispanic community, because of the numbers and the geographical the geographical area in which most of them live, creates a very, very Hispanic culture. The first time I drove down Main Street of Pasco when I came back here a little over 3 years ago, I said to myself, I can be in Mexico. There's nothing on this street that says you're in the United States. And I thought, unbelievable how much it's changed in 40 years. And this is what people have told me. You're not going to recognize the Tri-Cities when you get back there because Pasco has changed dramatically. And it has. And with the numbers came the culture. And with the culture came culture shock. Right? But yeah, it's not so because he lived there for 10 years.
Right. So speaking of, we're talking about Rick Rios, Pasco resident, business leader out in the Pasco community for Consejo Latino. We're going to be we do have some 509 area codes coming in, and if people are listening, we're going to bring them in a couple minutes. But Rick, before we get into that, one of the things that you told me when we were talking about the story was the fact that Consejo Latino, the local business leaders, were starting to communicate with the police and starting to communicate with leaders to talk more about improving community relations. And I think that's one angle that hasn't really been talked about yet in this story. And weren't you guys just talking with the police chief like a day, or correct me if I'm wrong, right before this happened, or what's happened? What are you guys doing? And then this just put like a.
Go ahead. St. Louis, met with the chief of police of Pasco on January 27th to express our concern about what we saw were conditions that could become problematic, if weren't already problematic. And one of them is that there doesn't seem to be the right training, because there's always been a conflict between the police department and the Hispanic population. Whether that's real or perceived, it exists. We felt that the police department had to understand that you live in a community that can be as much as 60% Hispanic, and you have predominantly white police department. Wouldn't it make more sense to go out and start recruiting Hispanic officers? And wouldn't it make more sense to start training your officers in how to de-escalate scenarios? And that goes back to a lawsuit that was leveled against the city, against one of the officers involved in the shooting. That the FBI charged the city of Pasco with not properly training their policemen and how to control the violence in their encounters with the public. Not to pay $100,000 fine for that, but the officers involved were not disciplined in any manner. So when you have an officer that creates a scenario that ends up costing the city $100,000, that brings the FBI in, and the FBI says, hey, you're not doing your job, and the officer faces no discipline, that sets the tone. And this is why our position was, there needs to be better training here in order for you to do a better job of communicating with the community. Because that don't happen right now.
Right, so we're talking about Rick Rios. Sharice, I know you have a couple other follow-up questions. I'm actually going to screen a couple of calls because we are getting some 509 area codes and we still producer. So I have both of my hats. So I'm going to leave it with Sharice for a couple of minutes. I know you had a couple of follow-ups, Sharice.
Yeah.
Okay, why don't you guys continue? I'm going to see who's called in.
So, Rick, I'm trying. Is it? Can we assume that, or maybe this is a small knit community, that the police may have known that the victim actually had mental problems?
Well, 3 officers involved in the shooting have not had any prior contact with this man. Ms. Montoya had a confrontation with police as recently as a year ago. But these 3 officers were not involved in that.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if they recognized him because he was on the streets. I mean, he's been in jail just recently. I mean, there is a connection between this man and the police department.
Right. So, I mean, he does have a history of mental disability and having to deal with the police department in general knows that this man had mental issues. So, and again, how has his family there? Has his family come forth and reacted to the situation? What are they saying?
Absolutely. Yep. We've been working with Tommy since last Thursday. We helped him with a variety of things. One of the things that we felt that we needed to do was make sure that the family was supported. The family that he had right here, his ex-wife and 2 daughters live in California. They had extended family here, and that's who we turned to right away because they were representing him in everything that had transpired since his death. His family has tried to look at this as a horrible accident, a tragic occurrence, but that if it wasn't an accident, there just has to be something needs to be done. So in that venue, they have been as compliant with the law and everything related to how we demonstrate, how we show our displeasure and not get in trouble. And people said, hey, let's all get together. We can do this because this is our community and they just shot somebody in the street.
Right. So we're talking about Rick Rios and now Sharice, and actually I'm doing my producer duties as well. We have Gabriel and Felix coming on in a minute. So I'm going to bring both of them on, Rick, and add to this conversation. And how does that sound?
That's great. Is it Gabriel or Eddie? Because I know that Eddie was going to be calling in.
I have Gabriel coming in, and I have Felix.
Okay, great.
Right now. All right, so let me try them. I'm going to try them here, and I have Felix. Are you there?
I'm here.
Great, and then let me just get Gabriel as well.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. So we have Felix and Gabriel. You're here with Julio. I'm Julio with Sharice, my co-host, and then Rick Rios is on the line as well.
Hi, guys. How you doing?
Hello.
All right, so we've been talking about what's going on. Rick has been filling us in. So Felix, we talked about the protest. We've been talking about the family. What are your initial, before we get into sort of, I want to get the conversation going, but what are your initial thoughts, your initial reactions to what has happened? I'm going to ask Gabriel the same question, but I'm going to do it one at a time. So, Felix, when this all happened, what's been going through your mind?
Felix, before you start, let me introduce you first, so people understand who you are and what your relationship is to Vasco and what transpired this week. Okay, Felix Parkins is a lot like myself. We have basically the same timeline. We grew up in this area. We were educated in this area. Felix graduated from high school, educated in the state of Washington. He went into the military, special forces in Green Beret in went into the diplomatic service in the United States for 20 years. He was not the distant for the country. But he came back to California because, just like myself, he knew that this area had changed dramatically, and someone needed to step up and say, hey, there are problems, and you're not going to get fixed unless someone starts addressing. That is how I've been feeling, because he was introduced to me at a gathering that I was at for Hispanic businesses, and that's how I first met him and realized that this is the man that has a plan. And I want to find out what it is, and that's how our relationship started. So for that trait, I'll let you learn, and then I'll let you introduce the unique way better than I do. Okay? All right, Rick, well, thanks very much for the kind introduction. We'll be listening, as you know, people take a look, which is the local community group. You that I chair, and I would share Rick Rios, and able to put that offset. It is an organization that is supporting the economic development and the aspirations of the Hispanic business community downtown Pasadena. So that's why we're happy to speak to Hispanic and non-Hispanic members of the community who have raised challenges in their profession and personal life. We have pretty close contact with the family of Antonio Soldado since the onset of the incident last Tuesday here, and we have to feel very confident in working with us and having us in the corner on this. To your question about my initial reaction, because that's something horrible that happened here in our community, which is broadly recognized as a complete breakdown in what is normally an accepted standard for police behavior and actions. We have a breakdown in policies and procedures, which were graphically captured in the cell phone videos of the incident, and which was going to underline how the police relate to the community, and then how the police support themselves in front of communities that they are to serve and protect. So it's like something I must say. I mean, having been a good guy, having been in three wars, as an infantry officer, I know my rules of engagement. I know what you see again, and every practice that I'm aware of was violated. What's tragic is that 2 weeks before this incident, we had met with the police chief and the city manager precisely to talk about ways that we could avoid an incident like this. We pointed to what had happened what happened to you. And the whole purpose of the meeting was to just see where we were and how the police related to the community and the training and the preparation, and to see if there wasn't anything more that the police could do to prepare themselves for an eventual scenario like which unfolded on Tuesday. We were assured by the police chief that all the mechanisms were in place, the protocols were assured, training and practice and rehearsal by the state officers completely mitigated any kind of scenario. Right? So, the scenario happened. Because I guess that the police chief either did not level with us or didn't get not know what how level training that his police force had. So, if something was very probably points to deeper issues than just the incident on Tuesday. I think what we need, and I will call for, is investigation, which is incredible. And it's incredible because it needs to be independent and high level. We're writing a letter as we speak to the Department of Justice, Attorney General Eric Holder, and requesting the immediate information of the Department of Justice conducting an investigation here to determine if the civil rights officers of gun were violated, and to see if there was necessity support. And we need to do that because the local police investigation afoot is simply not credible. Beyond that, we're able to report the changes to the training another native language. And for God's sake, when you shoot someone and he is murdered wounded, do you not have a responsibility to render life-saving assistance instead of handcuffing a person? All these things, when you're part of the protocol, must be reviewed. And we will demand changes. And I expect that at the end of this, we're going to have something we can move forward and complete protocol. You can see you wanted in the training and in the part of the procedures, which will, in my view, prevent a similar incident, at least to the extent possible, from happening in the future. So, if you want, we really appreciate this. If you want to introduce Gabriel, and I'd love to have Gabriel come in and weigh in on what his thoughts are, and then we can talk a little bit more about next steps, right, and what's going on. We really appreciate your time. But if you want to introduce Gabriel, go ahead. So, it is my pleasure to introduce Gabriel Portugal, a prominent member of our committee, an educator of the first order, former principal of the school here at Sonoma, who's been deeply involved in all sorts of community issues, and who sits on an advisory board named by the police chief to work with police on community relations. The gentleman was a radio program as well, and then had a high profile one on political activity in the area. So, Gabriel, it's you. Thank you, Felix. And thank you, Rick, for inviting me to this event. The ones that will not know, so thank you very much. Just a couple of things. I think Felix pretty much illustrates what's going on at this point right now. If you watch the video, you cannot help but get a visceral reaction. It triggers a storm of anger, and but I wanted to share with you guys who are listening that I think in the areas, the 70s and the 80s, we had some rallies too. We had a gentleman that was hit by a police car. Unfortunately, we didn't have videos, and it was not that easy like nowadays. But he was hit by they were chasing him. Obviously, he was doing something wrong. They were chasing him, went to a valley, and he was hit with a police car. He broke the pelvis, and they threw him in jail for over 24 hours without any medical attention. And when we all find out, it really got us all kind of upset, and we put a lot together. And then 10 years later, because we keep pushing for changes, finally something happened where the Department of Justice came in and forced the cities of not only Pasco but Kennewick and Richmond to set up some diversity training and to assist these departments to how to better serve communities, especially communities of color. And so I think it was 96, I'm not sure the numbers, 96, they took about 10 years or so for things to get to that level. And then the chiefs that were there, because I've been involved with 3 different chiefs and that chief left, and then we hired a new one, and he came up with a better attitude, with community-oriented policing, and set up the advisory committee to help in my area. So we did sort of better about the better meeting activities. So now I've been on for a while, and now being
to bring the police up to speed. And it seems like the tragedy of what happened Tuesday is going to lead to, you guys were talking about this. This happened, and now the community's in shock. And how do you move forward? Because, at least from what I'm gathering from the protest and everything, you guys are trying to work with the police as opposed to, I don't think there's a Rick. I want to bring you in before we bring in Eddie, but the sense of sort of going out again and this blanket statement that all police is bad. That's not the impression I'm getting from what you guys have done. That the community understands that police presence, the police department is essential to keep Pasco a place where people want to live, do business, and attract business. The police department is essential in that. But what we're saying, and it's evidently succeeded in a variety of scenarios and cases, is that there is lacking in the right type of training. And I was saying this with an individual just last night. It is really far-fetched to believe that there were 3 bad apples on this police force, and all 3 of them got to be at the same place at the same time. It ended up doing the same thing, which was shooting individuals. No, that is a training problem. These men were trained to behave in that manner. And that doesn't work with the community anymore because people are aware and people all have smartphones and they all have video. You can't hide. So let's bring in Eddie De La Cruz, and then what I want to do is bring in Eddie. Rick, I want you to introduce him, and then what I'd like to do after Eddie speaks, I want each of you to kind of give us sort of, I know that Felix has talked about reforms and writing to the DOJ, but the next concrete steps, and we also want to know, after we bring in Eddie, we want to know about the family. Like, you guys have been working, like how no one's really talking about the family and the tragedy. And if we can have those 2 points covered, I think, we would really, really welcome that. But first of all, let me bring in Eddie. And Rick, Eddie's on the phone. Why don't you introduce him to our listeners?
Sure, well, this is Eddie De La Cruz. Eddie De La Cruz lives in a small farm community about 60 miles from Pasco called Hermiston, Oregon. And Eddie's happy that he grew up there. He came there as a migrant kid, working just, with his parents, just like my parents came to Cornell. He grew up there. He was educated in the state of Washington. He lived there. But about 10 years ago, he began to understand that there was a disconnect between the city and the growing Hispanic population, and he did something about it. He created a commission that sat down with the city and said, hey, we're not going away. We need to find a way to work together. And what Eddie has done in Hermiston is a blueprint for what can be done in any city. And it all starts with sitting down and saying, they're not going away. We need to find a way to live together in our community. And I'll let Eddie go from there. Hi, Eddie. Welcome. Hi. Thank you, Rick, for inviting myself to the show. I've been listening to it. A very interesting show that you guys are doing, and we appreciate your support. First of all, I belong to the chairman of the City of Hermiston Hispanic Advisory Committee. And I'll explain that as I go by, but let me tell you, I have a great concern for what happened in Pasco. I think it would be a gruesome thing that the police did to this Hispanic person, and they need to make some serious changes. I mean, this is a wake-up call for this community, and when we heard this, we decided let's go over there and see what we can do, and kind of give an idea what PAC, Hermiston Rights Committee, has done here in Hermiston. The first thing that I see in Pasco is they have a big gap in communication with the Latino community. The city has a responsibility to include these people in their plans and treat them with respect. And they need to have some representation. And I know we have great leaders expecting this interview. The thing is that the city has to open the door for these great leaders to get together and form an advisory committee that gets selected to the city council. That's how they did the Hermiston Advisory Committee. The city council appointed us and formed the Hispanic Advisory Committee. So we're supported by the city council on our meeting. We have a meeting once a month. And one of the things that I want to mention is that, democracy is a good way of doing things, but it's very hard for Hispanics or Latinos to make it into a city council. And what I have to done here in Hermiston is being like a stepping stone. We already have 2 Latinos in the city council, so it's been working great. We're actually very happy. We're like an open forum for our Latino community to go and talk to us and say, what things need to be done, or there's some things that are not looking very good. Maybe we can change things. And we have our meetings once a month, and we also have the city manager or the city assistant with us, and the police chief or the police department. So it's great.
Right. Hey, so Felix, Gabriel, where does this go next in terms of reforms? Let me ask Felix, here we are, it's only been a couple of days, it's getting a lot of global and international attention. Where is this going next? I know you mentioned the weapons of justice, but are you meeting with the police chief? Has there been any indication that they're going to be cooperating? What's your impression, Felix?
Well, here's what is ongoing and what will be next. We've got one investigation that's conducted by the Special Investigative Unit, Local Law Enforcement Task Force, excluding Pasco Police, into what happened. This process will take 4 to 5 months, and then they will provide what they call an impartial and objective report, which will go to the Franklin County prosecutor, who will look at the findings and determine if there is sufficient basis for a determination that charges should be filed against 3 policemen who killed Antonio Zambrano. So that process is going. Now, we're going to help them. We're going to help them because this is not a credible process and it has an apparent conflict of interest. So we are going to bring in the Department of Justice investigation, which is a higher level independent investigation, which will seek to determine what really happened and to see if it was a violation of civil rights and an employment of accessory support. That's one thing. That's one investigation. In addition to that, you've got a coroner's inquest, which will be called, the coroner will call a jury of 6 people to look at the findings also and determine if the jury will determine also there's sufficient basis for the filing of charges. Secondly, there will be continued protests and vigils conducted by members of the community here to continue drawing attention to the needs. This will not go away. This is, while involved in Hispanic, I think it's important to say that this has shocked the conscience of the entire community. At the rally yesterday, where over 700 people, we had 50 shades of community: blacks, whites, Anglos, Asians, religious organizations. We had Orthodox priests, we had Christian, Jewish organizations. Everyone is outraged in the community. So this is no longer just an Hispanic issue. This is a community issue. So there will be continued protests, demonstrations, and public events to draw attention to what happened. Now, we will continue working, of course, with the city manager, but there is growing hesitation about what level of communication we should be having with the police chief, whose credibility is very much on the line, and who is the leader of a police force which has very obvious gaps in its policies, procedures, and training. So, there's about 2 or 3 things that can be said about the police chief, which causes to wonder if he really is in control. He really knows what's going on with this police force. It might be a little shaky right now, and I think there'll be a lot of questions that being asked. People are very uneasy about him right now. So that's what's going to happen. Now, when it comes to the family, we will continue to stand with the family. We will be meeting with the family members again on Tuesday. The mother and sister of the deceased arrived yesterday from Mexico City, I should say, and they will be coming. Should be coming in today or tomorrow here to Pasco. Additionally, you've got the estranged wife of Antonio Zambrano coming in from California. She is the mother of his children. He has two daughters, ages 15 and 12, by her, and they will be for the local contingent of the family here. Three groups, the Mexico group, California, and the locals here. The ex-wife has already filed a $25 million lawsuit. I think, she will probably want to coordinate with the other members of the family to make sure they're on the same sheet of music and they all will proceed. So there will be a lawsuit filed by the family, which is rather substantial, but you would expect that to be the case. So that's what's happening on him. We're also coordinating and talking to the Mexican consul who is based in Seattle. He represents the Mexican government. As you may know, the president of Mexico has expressed his outrage about what happened in Pasco, and the Mexican Congress has issued a declaration condemning the shooting. So the Mexican government is very much engaged. They are represented by the Mexican consul, Eduardo Vaca, in Seattle, and he has reached out to me to maintain some communication with what's going on here, and so I expect we will continue some communication with him and talk to him. We are also working with other organizations, including the American Civil Liberties Union, One America, and other organizations that want to help. There's also the Civic Alliance out of Olympia, which is an Hispanic organization. Also, they reached out to work with us and support us in various technical aspects. So there's a lot going on, Julio. That's a rough summary here.
No, it sounds like there is a lot going on, and that's why we wanted to talk to y'all now, because my sense is that this story and what's going to happen is, it's going to get attention, and it already got attention. Sharif, we have Gabriel, we have Eddie, we have Rick, we have Felix. Is there any other closing question that you have for them?
I wanted to know a little bit more about what's the history of the police officers that were involved in the shooting. Have they before had any kind of incidences of misconduct?
Well, you asked that first. Yes. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah. Felix, Gabriel, Rick, whoever. Yeah.
Thank you. I think Felix covered really well where we are right now. As far as the officer involved, we have information, and it's factual that she was involved in a call by a lady a woman was walking by here in the street from where I live, Road 68, and she was walking by, and they thought that she was, looking like breaking into a house or whatever they thought, but they called police, and then when the officer, the same, Flanagan is his last name, when he arrived, he was really, really rude to the lady, to the woman, pushed it in and against a hot summer, and he has been very, very hot, and it burned her face when they was pushing her down, and the city is involved in a lawsuit, and there's $100,000 that will be paid for this lawsuit. I don't have the details if it's already paid, but the lawsuit was presented, and it just shows the type of individual that the person, the shooter, what kind of mentality he has, and how he approaches people of color. So he does have a history of violent behavior. We have that information. I just, before I know time is running really fast. I just wanted to add up to what Pete says, and looking beyond the rally, looking beyond, we're looking at the redistricting that just went on, because there's a lawsuit in Yakima, and this lawsuit is about the way the elections for city councils are conducted, that is really hard. And here in the Tri-Cities, we have a similar situation. I count 14 Latinos have run for office, and they all get knocked out in the general because they see Gonzalez, Lopez, whatever, and we have, I'm going to say 50%, and I know people say 50%, but we have lots of Hispanics. Obviously, the ones that you go down on the table, and the ones that go mainly are the angles. But we have a pool, and we were able to elect a sheriff. We have a new sheriff in Norfolk County, and the Hispanic vote was very instrumental in electing that sheriff. So I think that the redistricting that's going to happen here in Pasco is going to allow us to have more opportunity to elect Latinos to the city council. So we're looking into way beyond just the advances of the rally, and we want to have someone there that defends and promotes the interests of the Hispanic community, because right now we are ignored. So I just wanted to add that. Right.
We're wrapping up. I just want to go around with one final question, and I want to direct it to Felix first, and then ask Rick and Eddie to weigh in. But Felix, what would be a resolution? When you can look at the work you guys are putting in now and moving forward, what would, and I hate to say the word victory, I really want to put more sort of like a resolution, or what's going to make this make you feel like you have to stop fighting? I mean, what do you want out of this?
There can be no other solution but the prosecution and conviction of 3 police officers who used excessive force as captured by the uniform videos. They cannot be exonerated. There is no way that they can be exonerated, and anything short of that will not be accepted by this community. I need to be very clear on that any solution short of prosecution, conviction of these people will not be accepted by this community. Officer Flanagan, Brian Flanagan, the man who was accused in 2009 of racial profiling and excessive force for pressing the face of a 30-year-old woman against a hot foot of a car, causing second-degree burns. He can should never again wear the uniform and represent the police community. So that's what we want. That's what should come out of this. Anything short of that will be a total breakdown here, and which will cause great unrest in our community, I must say.
Right, Rick, would you echo that?
I agree with what Felix is saying, and it really comes down to a very simplistic thought, and that is change needs to be made. And change only comes through legitimate effort. And I think that the one thing that we have demonstrated, and the Hispanic population and the community has demonstrated, is that this is a serious issue. And it's not an anger issue. It's not a violence issue. This community did not turn on itself and begin to destroy businesses and create problems and challenge the police force. The first thing this community did was go to the police and say, how can we start addressing this problem? So this is not going to go away, because the point of emphasis is taking off of the police shooting and put on civil disrest or violence. No, this community is united in what happened last week, and that they're not going to put up with it. Change will come from this. It's a tragedy that a man lost his life, but if we don't do something to change the process that allowed this, then it's never going to change.
Right. Well, gentlemen, I really I know Sharice and I are sitting here listening intently. We really appreciate your time. This was an excellent conversation. We'd love to know more. We wish you the best of luck, and please keep us posted. We're wrapping up. We're nearing the end of the show, and we wish you the best. Is there an opportunity to just let you know that training is not going to do it? We've done that in 96 with at all the departments go to a training. Training is not going to do it. They have to go in there and get all the police officers departments go to one location in the state of Washington to get training. They get the same training throughout the state. And they go to the departments, and then things transpire according to the culture of that chief or that community. And I think that the training by itself is not going to do it. Right? No, that's true. Well, gentlemen, we really appreciate your time. And
the Obama protocol will correct all of that.
right, so that's right. Now, for a couple we're going to be following it. We'd love to have you guys back. We are pushed for time a little bit. It was a great discussion, and we really appreciate your time, given all the work that you guys have been doing for the last week and the demands that are being made of media. And we really hope that you appreciated this conversation, and it was just kind of like gave you more opportunity to share what you wanted to share. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. So we had a lot of people there. We did. We had a lot of people there, and I thought, it kind of, it was a pretty intense conversation. Anyway, let's bring in Cynthia. I promised two of our callers to come in. We probably have about 5 minutes left, but I did promise Cynthia. And then Martin, our team, is going to call as well. And Cynthia wanted to say something. Sure. Cynthia, you wanted to say something. We're pressed for time, but we wanted to give you the opportunity.
Okay, no, that's fine. I was just gonna, put in my 2 cents. Pasco PD is made of diverse races, but there does exist a disposition to treat us, us who come out of this low-income community. They belittle us. We are made of factory workers, skilled workers who are abused by our own bosses at work. Many of us, proper pay, have to go home and expect to provide an awesome environment to where our children feel optimistic. And this can easily stump a man down. I mean, I hear it all the time. Oh, he was this and that, but that didn't give Pasco PD the right to do this. They do have a tendency to make a situation just escalate quickly by obviously just, what they want. Pulling out the gun first chance they get. I mean, I'm sure they think using that is gonna, give them what they want right away, but belittling a person, no matter who or what they are, where they're from, I mean, it's ridiculous. And I do believe the Pasco PD and its areas need to be more diplomatic when it comes to serving the community that they don't understand, obviously. I live here. I'm 32 years old. I'm a Chicana here from Pasco, single mother of 2. I work for Tyson. I am part of the USPW Local 1439. I'm fighting for wages there. I mean, I hear everything that goes on in my community, and just to know that this happens, it irritates me really bad because we're just trying to make it. A lot of us just work paycheck to paycheck. As a Tri-City State Pasco, that's ghetto part of Pasco. Oh, bro, how can you live there? I'm like, you know what? I love my community. My Rafa, we're tight knit. And, they have, everybody has their, the things that they go through. That doesn't really take the right to do that. We still, deserve respect if anybody else. And that's all I wanted to say.
Cynthia, we really appreciate you holding on and sharing that honesty. Thank you for so much for that comment. And, keep following and keep doing what you're doing because it's obvious that you care deeply about your community. Get out here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Bye.
All right, then we have Martin. Martin, we are cutting to the end. Martin, is he there? Yeah, Martin. Yeah. We probably have like another minute, so we bring you on, but you wanted to say something.
Oh, yeah. So, do I just start or what?
Go ahead, man. You have a minute. I mean, you wanted to comment about the steps of what are your thoughts? What's going through your mind? What are the shows? So we're giving you the opportunity.
Okay, guys. So I just want to go ahead and say that this issue that happens is something that we really got to concentrate to the whole nation going on with not only to the people but also Los Angeles in general.
That's great. We really appreciate it, and like you said, it's an issue that goes beyond just what's happening in the community, so we appreciate your time. Thank you. So, Sharice. Yes. Well, thank you. So, I'm going to give you the final word here.
I'm very happy to hear that the town is actually in solidarity and that they're organizing themselves. That they're not in isolation and that they're speaking up and they're taking action. And bringing this to the limelight has got national attention. So that's good for them. They don't have to feel that they always have here. And local attention. You know, that the police can't act, you know, they're already running around, you know, they're in the community. I'm sure a lot of these people don't have papers and they already feel like that's here. And, you know, it's good to hear that Newtown is organizing itself and speaking up.
Yeah, no, people like Cynthia are speaking out. Man, what she shared, I mean, what everyone shared, but what she shared really hit home. I mean, we didn't really get into the reaction from the Mexican government, and kind of bizarre that the president of Mexico is now using this to. Right, it's so ironic. My cynic in me is saying that the government of Mexico is using this to detract from other issues. But call me crazy. That's the one issue that's kind of this tragedy and how the Mexican approach is doing it. It's a little bit out there, but you know what? To be honest with you, that's such a small detail because what we heard tonight was real voices, real community voices about what's going on in Pasco, how they're trying to solve the situation, how there's a long history, and how people need to get involved. Get involved and do what you need to do. And it seems like when people are Felix, Gabriel, and Rick, and Eddie, Cynthia, and Martine, I don't think they're going to give up. And that's the impression I got. I don't think they're going to give up, and I don't think they're going to forget the memories of all these people that have died on their campus. For the police and Pasco, especially. Don't you have someone else? Anyway, Sharice, we're out of here. Alrighty. The Oracles Radio. Do it again next week. Thank you.